Vestaron is basically bringing a new slate of crop inputs to agriculture, and we're doing it via small peptides, naturally occurring peptides. So this technology has been around for a number of years. It's in a lot of the literature. There's always been a lot of challenges with, how do we produce these at scale? What's the regulatory path? And then how do you really make them active? Because they are larger than traditional synthetics. But much like the pharma world, these have a very high affinity for essentially a drug target interaction. So they perform a lot like synthetics, and you get that similar level of efficacy. Um, Over the years, Vestaron is about 12 years old now as a company. Historically, been very much R&D, and over that time period, they figured out how to make these things work, um, both from a production standpoint as well as regulatory and bioavailability. So, um, we are coming off year three of commercialization in the U.S., which has been really exciting. Um, but what we're finding is these truly are direct replacements for traditional synthetic chemistry, and the industry really hasn't seen these to date. So we're really excited to be able to bring these novel mode of action peptides to the market.
Yeah, that's cool. When you do get a chance to talk with somebody new in the industry who really can understand what, the intricacies and the background and understand kind of what you provide, are there things that you find that people are surprised to hear about the progress you've made, or maybe misconceptions that they are still holding on to? Any kind of reactions like that?
Yeah, the industry's been um, has a lot of preconceived notions, I guess is what I'll say. We've biologicals have been around for 30 plus years, and I think there's a bit of a stigma attached to them still. So for us, it really took a lot of show me with growers, with our channel partners, with key influencers and researchers in the market. I think everybody's kind of heard, okay, these softer technologies, they still have to be used with synthetics. They're not a direct replacement. So for us, it really took a lot of demonstration work, a lot of trial development work, in growers and the channels, seeing it both in a high pressure year, low pressure year. And now that we're hitting year four of being commercial, I think people are starting to understand that, yeah, this technology is most likely where the future is going when it comes to insecticides as a true replacement, for their traditional chemistries, or just in an IPM program with those traditional chemistries.
Yeah. Are you ever there when you see it click in people's minds and they get it? Like maybe they were skeptical, but like, what is it? What's that moment? What's that thing that gets them like, oh, okay, I see what you see now.
Yeah, I think, we had a customer out in California in an almond orchard who gave us a shot here about a year or two ago. And he's like, I have nothing to lose in this field, so I'm going to put you guys out and see what you do in a worst case scenario. And we held it down below 2%, um, and brought it down. Traditionally, they're about 12-13% infestation. And, after that, the comments were pretty good. It's like, well, we do have a replacement. He's like, we've seen it in a high pressure situation. You kind of see that light bulb go off, to your point, and you kind of have a customer at that point. So it's fun to see that. We're really looking forward to it this year. We're coming into row crops this year, in 2023. So again, really excited to kind of see, how we can change some things from even a row crop standpoint in 23.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have been working on this technology for a while, but from the commercialization and the rollout standpoint, you're still kind of early days and you're progressing pretty quickly. What have been, if you look at, I mean, you guys have global ambitions and global relevance. Like, where do you see, in what sectors or what regions have you seen like the quickest uptick in this? And they're the ones who are like grabbing it first. Like, where do you see like those first movers at right now?
It's generally in situations where you have high levels of resistance already. Spear, our first product, was the first novel nerve and muscular mode of action in about 15 years since the diamides. And when we got that mode of action, it really gave growers a new solution. So when you look at, specifically, we launched in Mexico just this past season. There are spots in central Mexico where there's just complete resistance to diamides. Spinosad has resistance down there. So they're looking for anything new just to get into the rotation. And once they saw that spear was a replacement for these and could really work into those rotations, um, it really set them up for success on the balance of the season. We also really see the big opportunity really with Europe and a lot of the changes that are being made in Europe. Growers are losing AIs at a record pace, specifically, in the higher value crops, they're running out of products to use. So, our ability to get become registered and get commercial in Europe here over the next couple of years is going to be really critical to growers having new tools in the future that again kind of truly offer that efficacy that they're used to seeing.
Yeah. So you've worked at a number of spots in your career. What was it whenever you understood what the product could do? Maybe you met some of the leaders in the team. Like, what made you say, okay, I'm going to put years of my life into this? Like, what was it that attracted you to this?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I still remember that day. So I actually went over to Kalamazoo to where our R&D headquarters are, and I interviewed with our CSO, Bob Kennedy. And he's been with the company almost since inception. I think 2 years after the company was founded. And to listen to him talk with the passion that his teams had on figuring this technology out over the past decade, really kind of got me excited about the technology and about bringing something different and novel to the industry that they really haven't seen yet. And at that point, this was back in like mid 2018. There was still a lot of things not proven, so it was a bit of a risk coming over. But on paper, you see 30 years ago in pharma, things shifted from small molecule synthetic to biologics, and those are generally proteins. So you kind of see the drug target interaction piece, and if it works in human health, why wouldn't this work in an agricultural input setting with insecticides? So we started out of the gate in 2018, 2019, putting together some pretty robust field trial summaries and getting it out in a lot of different crops, a lot of different uses. And before we knew it, we had all the theories that we had on paper were actually becoming true. And now we've seen it 3 years into commercialization. It's been really exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I was talking with a guy yesterday and I asked him the same question. And he said it's the passion. Like when you meet a founder who's got not only passion, but like conviction that this is going to work, it doesn't matter if the thing works or not yet. Like you see that it's going to, because they're not going to stop until it does. And
You're right.
you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
addictive. It's addictive when you see it. And it almost makes you wonder, like, how come, why do not all organizations function like that? Not all leaders are built like that. But man, when you got one, you know it.
Yeah, and it's a mindset, right? I mean, you've got to your point, you've got to really believe in it. But I think when you see the technology, you see it work, and then you see it help a grower's operation out, that's when kind of everything really clicks. And not everybody's got the risk tolerance to do it that early. But this has been one that has been really good from my standpoint. I think most of my team is really excited to be bringing this to the market. We'll look back on it hopefully in a few years and be really excited.
That's cool.
We got to. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's an easy in whenever there's like a pain point and they're kind of running out of options and they're just looking for another option, right? That sounds like probably the easiest in. But then you've got some others who are trying to be proactive, and maybe they're thinking a little bit long term, and they're looking at maybe the long term benefits that it has. Do you, even in those situations, do you run up against obstacles like, I don't know, this is a change to how I do things, and I'm not only is there maybe a risk with a new solution, but I got to change the way I do this or that? I mean, do you run into that, or is that people are pretty open for that?
No, I think most folks are pretty open, especially when you look at the specialty markets. I think you've got consumer demand at an all-time high to know what's been sprayed on their food, right? And what's going into the production of that crop. And you've got food companies and groceries that are putting more pressure back down the channel to the grower to either trace what has been going on in that field all the way through the channel, or requiring them to eliminate certain things from their operation. So I think, we're hitting the market at kind of an inflection point. And the benefit with our technologies, we are just a swap out. So there's nothing special the growers got to do. If anything, what we've seen is we've offered a bit more operational flexibility to the large growers. So the guys that are running, 30, 40, 50,000 acres of tree nuts, specifically around harvest, when they drop that harvest equipment into a field and they get a flare up, any other products, you're going to have to wait 3 to 5 days before you can harvest. With us, you can spray that morning and harvest in the afternoon. So it gives them a lot more operational flexibility, from a large operation.
Yeah, I think that's key, is to make sure that you don't have to significantly change what you do. In fact, it might even open up possibilities of what you can do. That's a pretty good selling point, I think, for some. You talked about the inflection point there. Do you think consumer demand and retailer demand is at that inflection point? Do you think we're beyond it? Like, what's your feel on that?
I kind of feel like we're coming into it. You look at some of the large producers, or you look at somebody like a Kind Bar who's going for bee-friendly almonds by, I think, 2025. These are all things I don't think are going to slow up. I think consumer demand's pushing them more and more in this direction. And I think technologies like ours that can, help the grower still get the work they need done in the field and control the pests, but also allow them to potentially market their crop for a premium by attaining certain targets, whether it's around biodiversity and not harming pollinators, or keeping a lot of the beneficials alive in the field just to help control other pest populations. I think things are going more and more that direction. We see it in Europe. We're seeing it in California. We're seeing the pressure with the neonics across the board everywhere. So I think it's just to me, it's more of a matter of time. But I think we're really coming into kind of that time frame where things are going to be more demanded from the consumer and the grocers.
I think you and I were talking about this recently. It seems as if there's almost a new playbook that's emerging, that growers and advisors are either needing or are starting to create their own, because there's so much new options for them. And if you start blending them together, you can make some pretty dramatic changes, I would assume. I mean, do you feel like your team are you taking the message to the advisor, or is the advisor coming to you and saying, hey, we've heard about this, what you can do on them? Is it a little bit of both, or do you feel it's a little bit more outbound versus inbound right now?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's so much really nice new technology coming into agriculture, and it's coming in at such a fast pace. It can be overwhelming to the grower and the consultant, right? And I think, how you can kind of move through the clutter and kind of make your voice heard a little bit more effectively is going to be key for a lot of these companies. Over time, there may be some sort of, I do see maybe over time a little bit more of an aggregation where some of the technologies kind of partner up and work together to kind of cut through the noise and look for total solutions for growers. But again, I think it's still pretty early. Like I said, there's a lot of new technology coming, and I think it's just a matter of, the next 18 to 24 months. A lot of this stuff's going to get sorted out just within how the markets are reacting right now.
So given that noise, I mean, a lot of that noise is all this competition and people making claims that, may be good, maybe substandard to what you guys do. Like, are you running into frustrations where, you're hearing, or you've got conversations that are like, well, we're going to do this and that because they do that. And you're like, no, that is not at the same level. I mean, is that a frustration, or do you feel like you're kind of standing alone right now?
No, I think for us, we're kind of standing alone. I think specifically when you look at, kind of the biosimilar world, kind of separating from traditional biologicals, technologies like ours kind of stand on their own right now. I wouldn't say we've got, our direct competition is really the traditional synthetic products that are applied on that acre, right? There's not really anybody else doing what we're doing just yet. So we're kind of plowing some new ground as we go. So I think for the most part, we're still standing on our own.
Yeah. Well, you're pioneering a category which has its benefits, but also has its challenges, right? Like you gotta not only sell the product, but also the category in some ways.
Yeah, you get a little bloodied up, that's for sure.
Yeah, but
First one through the
that's why
door,
the
right?
reward is worth it, right?
It is, absolutely.
So if you look forward to the next, let's just say year or two, if you're looking that far forward right now,
Yeah.
what are some of the things on the horizon that are excited? I mean, I would assume some of it is probably the markets that you're moving into, but like, what are the things that you're looking at? You're like, that's going to be fun. It's also probably going to be challenging, but here we go.
Yeah, so obviously we're kicking off into the row crop world this year, so it's going to be a lot of that. We look forward to a lot of success in that. I think we've got a really good solution uh, for growers in the Mid South and East Texas cotton. Um, there's Mexico. We will be fully registered for a full year now in Mexico, so our Mexico footprint is expanding very quickly. So we'll be opening up into new states throughout Mexico this year, and our registration is in place in Europe. So a lot of business development and really starting to touch some new markets within Europe and getting them prepped for the initial launch here in a couple of years. So a lot of things to do, but I really see this year immediately with the row crop in the Mid South and Mexico is our big markets
Yeah.
to expand into.
Well, based on, the successes you've seen so far, what do you think row crop growers are going to latch onto? Like, of all the different talking points, is there one that you think stands out and they're like, oh, they're going to like that?
Yeah, it's been interesting in our work this year that we've done with a lot of demonstration work throughout Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana. We thought there were going to be some other attributes that kind of come to the top, but really what resonated the most with growers is the fact that we didn't harm their beneficial populations in the field. And they managed those to help control some of their plant bug issues and things like that. And we didn't even think that was going to hit the radar. But the fact that we can come in now with the improvements we made as a company with our cost of goods at price parity with the other products in the market and help them protect their beneficials and maybe delay another application, that's money in a grower's pocket at that point. So pretty excited about how that's going to go this season.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit, but is the reason why you are standing alone right now because you figure out the manufacturing at scale and because you can achieve price parity and that's the thing that other people have struggled with, or is it you've just put more energy into it than others?
So I think we've got enough of a head start, and our R&D team has been very offensive in terms of defining a strong IP backyard, right? So we've got a lot of IP built up that really protects others from coming into this segment. But I think more importantly is we've kind of really identified both the operational, how we can get these peptides to yield through the fermentation process at titers that get us to row crop cost of goods, but also that regulatory path has been defined very clearly in the U.S. And even in Mexico, to where we've got a very clean line of sight on what it takes to get a product from the point where we discover an AI to the point where we can launch it, and we've got that dialed into a relatively short time frame versus a traditional synthetic product. So feel pretty good where we're at in terms of competition right now, specifically around peptides. But again, the company is definitely not taking its foot off the gas on that front. We're trying to stay 3 steps ahead of anybody who might come into this.
Yeah, that's cool. You've put in significant effort already, and you've got more to come. What has been the most rewarding part of this so far?
Probably building the team. We came in. I think there were 21 people in the company when I came in, and I think there were 3 of us in the commercial side. Now the team end of this year will be about 18 to 20 people on the commercial side, and we should be pushing somewhere around 90, 95 people through the company. So I think just building that team and seeing everybody's kind of equal levels of passion to what we're trying to do has been a lot of fun. It's been really rewarding from that standpoint.
That's cool. If you had to make a forecast on what the team or the organization or whatever looks like in the next, I don't know, 3 years, any forecasts?
I don't know. The next 3 years is going to be interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of dynamics from a macro standpoint in the market right now that are challenging. But I do, over time, I see us really as a standalone manufacturer. Really, we see insecticides going this direction long term. We've got a couple fungicide candidates in discovery right now. So we're when we look at our company in the out years, we really see it as a standalone business, and really functioning at a high level with multiple crop segments that we can service at that point. I don't know if that's in 3 years, but yeah, maybe in the 5 to 6 year horizon, it's pretty realistic.
Yeah, it's sometimes when things are moving so fast, it's hard to know. Like, and then
Yeah,
you
it's
say that's 3 years, and then 18 months in, you're like, well, we're already there.
yeah. That was really from an operational standpoint. Our operations team's been fabulous. They have outpaced where we thought we would be at this point. We didn't anticipate submitting for our Brazilian registration or being in row crops really until mid 2024, and everything's been accelerated to where we'll be in row crop this year, and then we're submitting for a Brazilian registration in Q3 of this year. So our operations team's done a really good job on that front, getting us in position.
I've got to ask, I'm just curious, in your day to day, when you're talking with somebody outside of the industry, and I'm guessing probably the word insecticide is a simple way for a normal everyday Joe to kind of understand, what it is you're doing. You may not understand peptides or anything like that, but
Right.
but do they probably understand insecticide? Do they get the importance? Do they understand like what this means
Yeah.
to the livelihood of a grower and to like sort of generational impact on sort of that field and that type of thing? Do they understand that?
Um, I don't know. I think even in a public setting, insecticides still got a stigma tied to it as well, right? And when you're talking to somebody who's not in the agricultural related field, it does take a little bit more conversation to help them understand, why these are so important to a grower's operation, and to your point, like a generational um, grower, especially. Um, but it takes a lot of discussion just around, you can't have the production you need with the efficiencies to feed a population that we're growing in the world. Um, to to do it, you need new tools, and if you can have new tools that are softer, but still accomplish that same goal, it's better for everybody, right? It's better
Yeah.
for the grower. It's better for the biodiversity of the farm. Um, it's better for the consumer. So I think if you've got the time and you can kind of walk somebody through it and get them to see the bigger picture. But it's tough. I mean, it's a very diverse world that we live in, and sometimes you can get that message across, and sometimes it's a little harder.
Yeah. I assume as a company, it's not that important right now. I mean, the everyday person has very little awareness of it, and they probably don't need to. But you personally, right, as you're explaining what
Oh
you
yeah,
do, I'm sure you get into that. People have some crazy ideas of like, oh, you don't need them at all, or they're all bad, or oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. Oh, you're okay. I thought they were bad, but now this is good. And just
yeah,
curious what that looks like in everyday life.
yeah. And a lot of times, once people understand what we're doing, it's kind of exciting to them. It's like,
Yeah.
look, great. There are other options that are out there, and for us, it's just we've got to tell the message to a larger audience, right? And we're getting more and more into conversations with CPGs and groceries, and other processors and kind of middlemen, just to get them to understand, right? Because if they understand there's other options, then they can use that to market to their customers, right? So
Yep.
it's getting more people to tell the story,
Yeah.
through the process.
Yeah, I can see there being a day where sort of consumer influencers or retailers, if you will want to know an appreciation of this in like simple terms and language. And I
Yep.
kind of wonder if they wouldn't be similar to the row crop growers who are thinking, oh, the beneficials gets my attention. That's interesting. This is more targeted.
Yep. No, I think right away. I mean, our core positioning is really around, when it comes to anything ESG is really around biodiversity. I mean, we're soft on beneficials. We're soft on pollinators. It tells that piece of the story that we're trying to get across, and that resonates with pretty much everybody from the consumer to the CPG, right? And I think again, to that point, the more people who understand the story and hear it, the easier it is to kind of gain that traction.
you.